the period of racing that we're talking about here, and this is why this interview means so much to me personally, because I remember watching all those Diamond P videos and all the interviews with you and Steve Evans down in the pits, and you always seemed like such a shy guy back then, and I'm not seeing that in you now.
Well, you're right. I am trying to be more social, but back in my racing career, my nose was the grindstone. I was not a social butterfly at the racetrack, and I burned plenty of pistons and I had plenty of work to do, but but I took it pretty serious, and after one thing, and that's to try to beat somebody down that drag strip.
Yeah.
I would like to spend a little time talking about the McGee car I drove.
Yeah, by all means.
And because after I left minor out there, I spent some time with the McGees in the quad cam engine, and Phil McGee and Chris McGee, we had quite a relationship with them, and when I first got into them, their car was not performing real well, in my opinion, and I was able to bring to them, how to race it. And, I drove it. Well, initially I didn't, but I took over driving, and I was able to help them out in what that engine needed, and in the fuel system, for one thing. And we looked at their barrel valve, and I said, no, the barrel valve needs to do this, it needs to do that. Chris said, well, I'll make one. Okay. Well, he called me up a couple days later. I got a new barrel valve. Get up here, Well, we eventually got that car running pretty darn good. In fact, the quickest runs in my career are the fours in the McGee car. Okay. And 492 was the quickest we ran. And I ran 290 in it. That is also my fastest run in a quarter mile, is in the McGee car. And we can talk about the 83 car and how good it was, but the fastest runs are still in the McGee car. Now we're talking almost 10 years later, but I gotta tell you, one drag race we had at it, because it is technically the last person I beat in a top fuel car. But we qualified with the McGee car, we qualified number 8 at, I believe it was the World Finals. And we were racing number 9, and that is Shelly Anderson.
Yeah.
Shelly Payne today, but Shelly Anderson was driving her dad's, Brad Anderson's car. Well, Brad, is an engine builder and manufacturer of the Brad Anderson heads and blocks and stuff. Well, he was trying to get the 4-valve motor, banned from NHRA. And so here we go to race Brad Anderson and Shelly Anderson at the time, first round. And being 8 and 9 qualifier, you're dead first. So we're we go to the water box, and we're going to get suited up. And I go over to talk to Shelly a second, and she was nervous, quite nervous, I felt. And but anyway, we get we climb in, and they play the national anthem, and start your engines, and we start that McGee car up, and we knock them off. We beat them in first round, and they were heartbroken, and that the McGee car got by him. And then we go to second round, and Eddie Hill beats me. Eddie was running really good. Yeah. Eddie Hill knocked us off. So in my career, my last win was against Shelly Anderson, and then the defeat was Eddie Hill. I actually drove a little bit after that again. Because I drove a models car one test session when Tim Richards was crew chief on it. They were world champion. I got a chance to jump in it. I made 5 or 6 runs in that car. Ran 5 flat in it.
What,
they were trying to get
what year would that have been?
94, I believe, maybe
Okay.
93. Well, maybe not. It was in November of the year one of his world championship years, because
Okay.
he was the world champion. We raced down in Bradenton, Florida, testing ground effects for him, and that's an interesting conversation racing for Tim Richards.
Yeah.
Yes, he drives the car from the outside. He tells you exactly how to drive it.
Really?
And yeah, which I can expand a little bit.
Yeah.
The first burnout, I go to drive it and I didn't smoke the tires. Well, it's got a throttle stop on it, and I'm used to giving it good throttle. Well, I rolled it too far out. I didn't hit it hard enough, so he wasn't real happy with me. So then we made a couple of runs, and the ground effects steered the car, and it really had the car glued to it. It worked. It really worked. The ground effects really worked, but it's heavy and it wouldn't ET also. But one run, it was taking me towards the guardrail, and I had the front wheels turned, and nothing was happening. I'm looking at the front wheels, nothing's happening. So I lighten up on the throttle a little bit, and I get steering back, and down the track I go. So I tell Tim that, and he said, well, okay. He says, were you okay? Yeah, okay. Well, then they had a computer. He said, you lifted. Well, yeah, I was down there driving the car. Never, Tim, never lift on my car. He says, you're full throttle or lift totally, but you don't drive my car. Oh, okay. That wasn't my style so much, So then he says, Gary, you're sneaking up the RPM on the starting line a little bit on the burnout. Yeah, I kind of bring it. That's my style. He says, I don't like that. Okay, I won't do it. So then we go to race, and he says, Gary says, the stage, and he says, I don't want to hear the engine move up 1 RPM. Okay, he says, you could take the slack out of the throttle linkage if you want. Oh, well, thanks a lot. I'm like, I'm afraid to even step on this thing now. But anyway, we raced, and we actually got beat. Daryl Gwynn beat us first round when he was driving. He ran a 520 on us and beat us. But we made test runs in it. So it was kind of interesting driving a world championship team car, Tim Richard and Joe Amato,
Speaking of Tim, he just got inducted into the International Drag Racing Hall of Fame this last year. I was down there for that, so I was glad to see him finally get into the Hall of Fame. So that's a good thing.
Yeah. No, that's good. I mean, he's great, And then I drove for Mike Peak one time. I drove at Topeka, and I think we got to 5 flat with that one too. We needed a 4 to qualify, but yeah, so it took me, when I quit professional drag racing, it took me maybe 10 years to kind of come down from it. But the McGee car and driving Amato's car and a little bit with Mike Peak, and kind of allowed me to kind of step away, So, but it took 10 years to get it out.
Well, but you're still not away from it because your son's racing, right? And I need to ask you, Cammie, she's your niece, right? Is she still? I know she was in junior dragster. Is she still racing?
Well, not today. She raced a junior car for numerous years, and then she worked with Jason Rupert on the Nostalgia Funny.
Oh, okay.
And then parted ways. She's actually over at Phoenix. Pardon me, Vegas. She's over at Vegas this weekend to the national vet working or hanging around one of the nostalgia cars that are racing over there,
Okay.
So she's nitrous in her blood,
Yeah. Well, your
she's good.
son's
Yeah,
racing.
my son Randy has done quite well. Division 6. He's won 2 national events, both at Seattle, and he won Division 6 one year, and he's in the hunt numerous years. He's been running Super Comp 10 years. We just I raced up there with him at the Division 7 doubleheader at Bakersfield a couple of weeks ago, and we got taught a lesson up there. That's a tough class, Super Comp.
Yeah.
And he's coming to the World Finals. We'll do that. So yeah.
Well, it keeps you in the sport. So did you yourself ever do any nostalgia racing or not?
Well, I raced with John Cox and John Rodak when they were partners. I worked on the crew. Now I never drove the car.
Okay.
I worked on the car. Worked on the cylinder heads and the assembly of the engines. And then when they split, they split up after a while, and I went with John Rodak, and we raced that with Jack Harris driving initially, and then Randy drove, made a few runs in it, and then Mike Chrisman, he drove it also until Rodak pulled out of it, and but we haven't done any actual racing in quite some time.
So
yeah.
was 94 was actually the last year then that you drove a car, is that right?
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, you're done driving in 94. What do you do with the rest of your life? What'd you do after that?
Well, I got into a couple street routes. I got a 40 Ford pickup and a 32 Ford Roadster, and the Roadster's got a blown 392 Chrysler in it with a Rodak water block 392 aluminum heads. It's an all aluminum 392.
Wow.
Goes like a rocket ship. It's got a raceback dash in it, and it's got a Richmond 5-speed and a Winters quick change, so it gives you the A-ticket ride.
So are you
my 40 pickup is more a driver, It's got a small block Chevy in it, but I drive the heck out of it. I just completed 4,200 miles drive up into the Northwest and Idaho and stuff in the 40 pickup. Yeah.
Are you gonna have both of them down at the Nitro Revival next weekend?
I am. Yeah. Now, how is one guy going to drive 2 cars up there? Well, Henry Walther will be driving my 40 up, and somebody will go with me on my 32. But we'll be up there Friday night, and then all day Saturday. I probably won't be there Sunday. You're coming to the Nitro Revival?
Yeah, I got my media credentials. Are going to be out there. My son's going to be coming with me, and we're going to be filming the entire event. Last year when I did it, it was just me, and it made it really difficult to try and get the interviews done. So I'm bringing along a partner in crime this time, and Mike Couch is going to be hanging with us, and I think I actually have to be his designated driver again this year.
Well, yeah, right. I understand. Well, you'll see my street rods. We'll be there talking the talk. Walking the walk.
So
I'm looking forward.
Well, Henry Walther, I haven't met him in person yet, but I've had some communication with him, and Terry Cap, a native of Canada up there. We're going to be trying to get an interview done with him after the Nitro Revival is over. So, I mean, what kind of a relationship did you have with Terry Cap?
Well, it's certainly very good today. Back when we were competitors, I don't know. He beat me at Indy when he won.
Yeah.
So I can't like him too much.
Oh, and he's probably still mad at you for stealing Bernie Federaly away, right?
Well, I imagine. I don't blame him. but Bernie wanted to do other things, in his life. When I first met Bernie, he was a mechanic in a dairy, fixing dairy trucks.
Wow.
that's how he made his living. Then he opened up a cylinder head business and was doing that for some time. But I do believe he wanted away from that, and the opportunity come to Hemet, and
Yeah.
happened, and we got him in the middle of the year, which was a good thing, So there's
And look,
lots of stories, a lot of stories with Bernie and stuff, So
well, and with Bernie Federally, the rest is history now at this point. I mean, wow, what a stellar career he went on to have. Incredible.
well, after he left minor, he with Force, and he was part of that dominance building effort,
Yeah.
Well, to put my career in a little perspective time wise, when Minor released me in the end of the '86 season, John Force hadn't won a national event yet. His first national event win was Montreal of '87.
Yeah.
I mean, think about that for a little bit.
I know, and the funny thing about John Force is when he started out, it was a disaster on wheels. I mean, he running into guardrails, blowing stuff up, oil and tracks, down to the point where
Oh yeah,
I think Larry Sutton wanted to throw him out of OCIR at one point.
I got my John Force story that I tell. We were at Orange County one time with Larry Minor in a semi, and John Force is there with his. I believe he had a semi, but he had his team. So this is before he had won a national event for sure. But anyway, they were parked in front of us, and that's how you did it at Orange County. And he felt that we were taking up too much room, and he came over and gave us all kinds of crap for taking up too much room in the pits, with our operation out of Hemet. And look at what he's got out there today. Give me a break, huh?
Yeah, I've heard some John Force stories about the old days out in Southern California racing on those tracks and what a mess it was. And this is what this is what I love about the sport of drag racing. If you're willing to put in the hours and put in the hard work, I mean, look at you.
Yeah.
The sky's the limit.
John is one of the great funny car drivers out there today. Yeah. I mean, he gets it down the track. He still wins his share of rounds and races. I mean, he's John Force. I mean, he's he fields darn good cars and he can drive them. So.
Yeah. And what's fun to do is to go back in time to like the 80 Cajun Nationals or in that era of time when Steve Evans used to interview him at the end of the track. It was a completely different John Force back then than what you see now. The character grew as time went on.
Oh, sure.
And
sure, absolutely.
And unfortunately, between him and maybe Ron Capps, they're really the only two characters that are left in drag racing right now.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys were all bigger than life back there. You were all characters, as far as I'm concerned. Everybody had a great personality back then. So,
yeah. Well, it was different, I guess. But I'm like I've said, it was a heck of a lot of fun. And I mean, Steve Evans and I were good friends because he lived right where close, and we were social. And that era of announcing between Dave McClellan and Steve Evans, I mean, and, you can't hardly get any better than that, I mean, Bob Fry, today is a stat guy. He knows everything, it's something, really is. Yeah.
When we get out to the Nitro Revival, are you going to be in the All-Star autograph session? I assume you're going to be there at the table.
I will. Yeah, I will. Yeah.
Okay. So everybody hear that out there. There's going to be 40 Hall of Famers out there, and Gary Beck's going to be one. Speaking of that, you're inducted into the International Drag Racing Hall of Fame, right? Garlett's thing down. What year did that happen?
1998.
Okay.
And I can explain a little bit about some Hall of Fames.
Yeah.
I'm very fortunate, but there's a pretty good list of people on the 98. I'm the only one that's still alive. It's amazing. But I was inducted, in that one in 1998. Henry Walther did the induction actually,
Oh, okay.
and did a great job. Um, and then I was inducted into the Canadian Motorsports Hall of Fame in 1999. Ray Peets and I were inducted together as a team. They inducted because they only induct Canadians,
Yeah.
and I am considered a patriot, which I go along with that. I actually was a landed immigrant into Canada,
Okay.
but my citizenship is U.S.
Yeah.
as we spoke about. But Ray Peets is Canadian. That was a Canadian race team. So the race team was inducted into the Canadian Motorsports Hall of Fame in 1999. And then in 2015, again, Ray Peets and I were inducted into the Canadian Drag Racing Hall of Fame in 2015. And then I was inducted into the Division 6 Hall of Fame in 2017 for because I have 6 division titles because
Wow.
they count the out of division titles back into Division 6 and 2 championships. So Division 6 claims that, which puts me on a pretty elite group up there, So, I mean, you're talking Jerry Ruth and Pat Austin, and I mean, you give me a pretty tight group there,
Yeah. Well, so one of the things that in just general terms that I wanted to talk with you about was, and this isn't so much about you, but that period of time in 1980, the early 80s, when, you were having the peak of your career. You had Muldowney, who was on top of her career. Uh, I don't know whether Big Daddy was really a huge factor during that period of time, because he disappeared for a while in there, as I recall. But what was it like during that period? I mean, you guys, to all of us who were racing fans out here, you guys were all superstars, and you were all battling for it all the time. It seemed like to me, it was a magical period in drag racing.
Well, yeah. Looking back on it, it certainly is, and again, it goes all back to competition, and funding, funding the cars, and then the crews, and all of us worked hard to improve our crews. Certainly at minors, we, even before Bernie came, we were moving the crews around and to come up with proper crew people. We had even and Bernie came and was part of that, but we had starting to get specialized with cylinder head people, the bottom end people, the clutch people. We were starting to get specialized, even though they had multiple duties on the car. We were, more and more equipment on the road, just more of everything. A miner's car, we didn't have the data recorder on it. He was against it for a while. We never had it on the '83 car. And I think he finally knuckled down, and they had him after I left. I think they got him.
Well, it's a period of time. Kenny Bernstein and I think Tim Richards and Joe Amato, Dale Armstrong with Bernstein and Tim Joe Amato, they and I've never decided whether I think it was good or bad. I know a lot of people have opinions on this, but those two teams really changed the way the sport operated going forward. I mean, them developing, Bernstein developing the onboard computer, and Tim Richards with the things that he did over there, and I mean the sport changed right about that time when you left. Do you agree?
Well, it changed, the money that it took. The budgets had to go up, and Larry Miner tried to get Dale Armstrong away from Bernstein.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. I can only repeat what I heard, but it was a um, uh, multi-million 5-year contract,
Oh,
and and Armstrong had went to Bernstein and said, "Hey, I got to look at that," and Bernie, Bernie, uh, Kenny Bernstein had to go to Budweiser and say, "Hey, they're trying to steal my guy," and they had to match it or come up with a program with it. But
yeah,
that got it all started,
yeah, and
and because Dale Armstrong was an innovator in the sport, and and that's where it was going, and the clutch, the cannon that he really developed, and then after that it was in the fuel systems, the slide valves, and then the Pete Jackson barrel valve. We at Miners we got the first Pete Jackson valve because I was kind of pals with Pete, and he developed this thing, and he said, "What do you think about trying this?" Well, guess what? It was 540s, 550s, 540 as soon as we put it on. I mean, it's exactly what I had. I had a beat valve, an Enderley barrel valve, and I had made it in the lines of that direction, but nothing close to it. But it was sparked. So I looked at his barrel valve. Yep, this is going to work. you know, and and it certainly did. Yeah.
well, and Dale Armstrong, if I, I got my notes here, I think I lost that in here, but isn't Dale Armstrong? He was part of that whole group up there in Canada too, wasn't he? Back at
He was from outside of Calgary. Yeah.
yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you were
Yeah.
familiar with him, but I mean, and I know there was a lot of controversy around the development of the Batmobile that Bernstein put out on the track, and they just basically were unstoppable. But in my opinion, it changed racing forever from what I grew up with to a whole different sort of generation of drag racing. Whether it be
Yeah.
good or bad, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you can have another whole conversation where the sport is today, if it's in trouble or not, and I mean, I mean, if you say yes, but you can say yes, but it's all automobile sports. It's every one of them. It's
Yeah.
not just drag racing,
Well,
you
and
know.
I think that's just, we won't go into this topic because
Yeah, right,
they could spend 5 hours on this, but I think a lot of it
right.
has to do with guys like you, guys like me. I remember
Yeah,
when I was 7 years old, laying out on the garage floor with my dad, doing a valve adjustment on the Ford station wagon, and
yeah.
changing oil and doing all that. I just don't think kids just don't do that anymore. And I think that love of all of it is kind of gone away,
Well,
unfortunately.
let me just drag a couple other names into this conversation. Rob Flynn. He's from Edmonton. When I moved to Edmonton, he was sweeping the floor. He was a teenager sweeping the floor of Wheeler Dealer Speed Shop for Terry Cap. You know, that's what got nitro in his veins. Right? Look where he's at now.
Yeah.
You know, and now he's working for Mike Salinas, right? Well,
Yeah.
I had a conversation with Mike Salinas here a couple of years ago now, out of Pomona, and he says, Gary, he says, and I didn't know him. We just met, and he says, I go back with you a little bit. He says you were racing Fremont when I was just a toddler, and I you allowed me to stand in the seat of your car. My dad took a picture of me standing in your Export A car. So it's 74.5,
Wow.
1974, 75. And he says, I got those pictures on the wall of my office. And he says, I'm going to win a championship like you did. And that's Mike Salinas. That's what he told me a couple of years ago. And look what he's doing. He's knocking on the door, you know, it's amazing. Um,
Well,
yeah.
that we live in an era now where the Cackle Fest has grown, and what Steve Gibbs has done with this Nitro Revival after he stepped away from the hot
Yeah.
rod reunion. But Bill Pitt said something to me that has really stuck with me, and he said, what the Cackle Fest has allowed to happen is the fan to come back together with the hero that they knew from years ago. And for me, that's what it's all about too. I mean, you guys were all heroes to all of us.
Well, not many people get to do what we have done, and it is special. We had the desire and somehow figured out a way to do it, but not everybody can do it. You just can't, and so it is special. You're a professional out there, but but without the fans, you're nowhere.
Yeah.
And I enjoy the autograph sessions. I'll be bringing. I have today. I was sponsored by Justice Brothers, and they created a handout, and I'll bring a bunch of them and sign as many as I can. I wasn't able to go to the reunion or to the revival last year, but I am going this year. And but I was at the revival the year before. The autograph session was it was over maybe 3 hours long. I think you signed up for everybody that came in the gate. We had 40 people signing autographs.
Well, I'm gonna bring a picture out, Gary, to put on the wall of fame back here. I'm gonna get you to autograph something at some point.
Okay.
We can add you to my wall back here. So to wrap this up, Gary, what's your future? What's the future look like for you? What are you up to? What are you going to be doing? Hanging out with your son, racing?
Well, that's certainly part of it. I enjoy my street rods, but I got into model trains also, and I got quite a train layout here in the house, an overhead downstairs, and I got this tiny little condo that I live in, 1,200 feet. Little two bedroom, 2-story place. And I got 600 feet of track downstairs. I got a tunnel through the fireplace, tunnel through the walls. And I got 5 trains on the layout today. I got the G scale, the large scale.
Oh, you did? Okay.
And I got a train 40 feet long, and I can run 3 trains at a time. So I'm busy. I got my car stuff, and these reunions and revivals are certainly part of it. I'm kind of done with indoor car shows, but I do the outdoor one-day stuff, with my street rods. And I got my trains, and I'm, life is good here, and I'm busy, retired, and happy, and just moving along, so.
I talked to Carl. Well, I told you I talked to Carl Olson earlier today.
Right.
Just I needed some info from him, and he said he had what was his grandson down there at your place for a little while, just mesmerized by the trains, huh?
He did, yeah. It's fun to bring the little kids in. In fact, this afternoon, my neighbor asked if he could do the same thing. But my trains, I guess I have to describe it as, it's like being hooked on nitro, because it's a little elaborate, but it's you're never done with it. Really, it's the track portion of it I think is done, but I'm working on houses and scenery and and people, and I have made it special, custom to me. I have a Gary Beck complex, which has a Gary Beck speed shop, a Gary Beck car museum in it, and my niece's has the Cami Beck coffee shop to go along with it. I built a Truck Town dealership, which is Dave Barcelone's dealership up in Washington. Drag racer. So I copied his dealership. I have the Crab Cooker restaurant, which is one of my favorite restaurants here in Orange County. I have the Emperor's Car Club building.
Oh.
Now, we never had a building. We had a garage with a dirt floor. But I got a modern day Emperor's building with cars and stuff in it. So I've got a lot of special items on my train layout. I mean, it takes me an hour and a half or more just to do a demo on it. And
wow.
if you're out this way, you got to come by.
Well, here's the thing, Gary. I grew up in a HO family, my dad, my father and I, from the time I can remember, we're building and building. And you're right, it never ends, does it? You just keep adding
Never
and
ends.
building. And we did a lot. My dad was never an artist, so I always got stuck sculpting mountains, with taking
Oh,
foam,
yeah.
taking wire and making the mountains and the tunnels. And we had
Right.
I have great memories of running the and I'm hoping someday to be like you, Gary, to get back to it.
Oh, I mean, it was a bucket list item 7 years ago. I had some heart issues and I didn't know how I was going to come out of it. And I said, I need a hobby. And I got into trains. Well, I come out of the heart thing just fine. But the trains are going like crazy. It's got a trolley run, the trolleys go back and forth. I mean, and I built, I used to live in El Toro, um, California, which is next here to Laguna Niguel. But I saw a picture of an El Toro train station from the 1800s. So I built one of those. So I got an El Toro train station and I got an engine that runs on rollers there. And, I mean, it goes on and on and on. And the power unit, I got 5 power units to run all the things.
Wow.
And I'm probably going to have to add more there also. It's like nitro, it's just like nitro. You gotta, how much power do you want? I used to have what 90 watt transformers. Now I got 15 amp and now 20 amp. Got to put a couple more percent in the tank.
Just like a drag racer, go big or go home, right?
Well, that's it. Oh, it's gone crazy. But yeah, if you're out this way, have some time, you should come down for a demo. It's about an hour drive from where the revival is.
All right. You know what? One of these days I'm going to take you up on that offer. I really will, because I want to see that. Well, Gary, unless you have anything to add to this,
No, I'm good. I'm good. I enjoy it. I can certainly anytime we can expand. Yeah.
well, I just want to say this as we close this out, and I want to say this for all of us racing fans out here too, that watching your career, I was a teenager, in the early 80s, and watching your career through the 80s was, for me, this isn't hero worship of you, but I got to say I'm a fanboy.
Well,
Being able to talk to you is just a thrill.